Welcome everyone to my Squirtle only run of Shining Pearl. The goal here, as always, is to beat Cynthia, the champion, with a lone Squirtle in the party. Comment below before we get started and let me know if you believe this challenge will be easy or difficult. Before we get started with the run, let's go over what makes Squirtle squirt. Being from Generation 1, Squirtle will be hatched from an egg starting at level 1. Alongside Cyndaquil, the first few levels will be difficult to get since our stats will be low and we will not be hitting very hard. The downsides with picking Squirtle is dealing with a few of the gym leader's typings. I'll go into more detail a bit later on how to combat some of that, but for now, let's check out the base stats of Squirtle. Squirtle is very defensive with its best stats in defense and special defense. All in all though, Squirtle's stats are actually very well rounded to be either a special or a physical attacker. From what I experienced with Turtwig however, we're going with the special route, as it will be much easier to take down opponents. I'm going to go ahead and show you the level up attacks for Squirtle, but just note that once we get Water Pulse at 15, we will take nothing else from this list. Even then, none of the attacks will be on our final moveset either. It's all about the TMs this time around. Squirtle can learn quite a few of them crazily enough. The 4 TMs we are going to grab are Work Up, Double Team, Surf, and Ice Beam. To me, this was the best set I could think of for most boss fights. Now that we know a little bit about Squirtle, how about helping Squirtle out by hitting that like and subscribe button? And also don't forget that bell as well. The egg has hatched and it's finally time to check its stats out. Crazy enough, we actually got the Modest Nature, which is exactly what we wanted. I named Squirtle the Squirts, as I could not think of anything better to name him. After grinding for a little bit, we make it to the big city of Jubilife. Gotta take down those 2 kids in the trainer school for making fun of the nickname of Squirts. It's actually crazy that I was able to get through both of these fights just due to Abra using Charged Beam and dealing hefty damage. At this point, I actually decided to do a no items in battle run. What I mean is, I cannot give Squirts any items during battle. The exception to the rule is held items, since those are given before a battle and used automatically. This will be a challenge run and a half with these rules. Needless to say, I knock some sense into the kids and get the TM for Work Up and pop that sucker on immediately. Next up is our first rival fight. His name this time around is Lewis. If you want to name the rival in future videos, drop a comment below and pick a couple of names. At the beginning, I picked Piplup to make sure this is a water type run, and that also gives the rival a Turtwig. While I hate knocking out one of my favorite Pokemon, I give it some loving water to knock it out and pay a visit to Orberg. I never get tired of walking into this gym with a grass or water type to just completely annihilate everything in my path. Squirtle is no different. Geodude goes down without a fight. Onix has Sturdy, so it does take a couple hits to knock down the Rocksneck. Right after knocking out Onix, Squirts leveled up to 15 and got Water Pulse. This attack destroyed Cranidos, and that gym was history the moment I stepped into it. The problem is, this will be the easiest gym during the entire game. Most of the gym leaders will take at least 2 attempts, since I've never done a no item run like this before. Either way though, we move on to our first Team Galactic Commander, Mars. The thing is, I try to be sneaky and get as many workups in as I can on the first attempt. I should have known better and paid the price for it heavily. After learning the lesson and committing it to the brain for the time being, attempt 2 is basically the same, just not as many workups. Gardenia is where it shows that I am not ready to move on yet. We start off with a couple of workups before taking down Cherubi. The damage it's dealing doesn't seem like much. Turtwig goes down in a couple of bites, even getting a flinch in the middle of it. Then we have Roserade. It is much faster and takes Squirts down with one Petal Blizzard. I actually try again for several attempts before deciding that it's time to actually grind for once. No items in battle is actually harder than I thought it would be, but even more so is the grind it takes in order to take down Roserade. I actually have to grind to level 30 in order to even have a fighting chance against this leader. Cherubi lets me set up work cups against it while getting pelted with Dazzling Gleam. It doesn't deal very much damage, but every point of damage actually matters in this fight. Turtwig goes down in one bite as well, and we come to Roserade, who actually leaves me at 1 HP with its attack. This was so crazy that the game let me have this instead of Squirtle doing the lovey-dovey hanging on by a thread thing. Trust me, we're going to be using that a lot as we get further down the road. Jupiter's turn as always, right after the second gym leader. Jupiter is very interesting in that Zubat has Confusion and Poison chances. The Confusion does go off, but it doesn't really affect Squirtle all that much. I was more worried about the Poison than anything else. Skuntank comes up next, and I surprised myself with how much damage was done to it. At the moment, I thought less than a half would be done, but it was more than 3/4 of the health bar taken down. I'm very happy this was a 2-shot since I did not want to have to deal with Poison in this fight. The second Lewis fight is here, and I actually worried about this one a little. In my mind, I was thinking he had Roselia in his party, but instead, since he picked Turtwig, he will have Ponyta instead. This is actually great news as the fight is easier than thought. Starly starts off with double team memes while I set up workup memes. Too bad my memes were just a bit more powerful. Grottle deals a hefty blow to Squirtle, but nothing he couldn't handle. For some reason, I thought Grottle was part ground at this point. Irregardless, he does go down in 2 hits. Weasel takes a bite out of Squirt before being pelted with water, and Ponyta is beautiful but just cannot stand up to water being thrown into its face. Normally, I go into the Maylene fight with some idea on how the game is going to go. This time, I have no clue how to proceed with Squirtle. It actually sucks that I do not quite one-shot Meditite with Water Pulse. Meditite used Flash a few times to reduce my accuracy, which actually did not harm Squirts at all. Eventually, however, Water Pulse finally gets the knockout after powering it up with a workup. And Machoke is next. It takes 2 hits to knock out Machoke, but not before lowering my HP and speed with Rock Tomb. I don't think the speed stat actually mattered too much in this fight, since I know that Squirts is not faster than Lucario. This fight took a dark turn when Lucario screeched and Squirts missed his Water Pulse. It doesn't help that Water Pulse has an accuracy of 90. We are hit, but hang on by a thread with 1 HP. Thank goodness for friendship in this game. Maylene is down and I'm noticing a trend. Let's see if you spot in the next few gym leader fights. Leader Wake was an absolute fluke that I got through it. Gyarados deals a decent amount of damage with that crunch attack of his, and the only way Squirts can get through this is to use Work Up a few times. By this time, I've added Ice Beam to the moveset to deal with Pokemon like this that are resistant to water types, but not ice. After a few turns, Gyarados does go down to the Ice Beam, and we meet Quagsire. Quagsire is not going to be doing any more giggling since that Ice Beam shriveled him right up. Floatzel is his ace, and a good one at that. Crunch will normally take down Squirts, but he lives on 1 HP by friendship not once, but twice in order to get the win. The third rival fight with Lewis is a breeze compared to those last few fights. Having Ice Beam on the moveset with a workup makes easy work of both Starly and Grottle. 1 bite also knocks out Weasel, and of course, a Water Pulse to Ponyta for it to just go down. This is a nice and easy fight since we have a lot of health fights coming up, starting with this next gym leader. Fantina is where we hit yet another roadblock. This block actually took quite a while to get through as well. At Squirt's current level, it seems like it should be an easy task to take down this leader. The problem is speed. Drifloon gets Will-O-Wisp off and burns Squirts. That being said, it's still a one-shot with Ice Beam. Then comes out Gengar, who uses Confuse Ray. And Squirts hits himself in confusion. The next turn, Sludge Bomb does massive damage, and Squirt's Bite barely does an eighth of Gengar's health. This was the best strategy I had to come up with at the time, and it's back to grinding in the Grand Underground. Also, stick around for something shiny a bit later. Grinding up to level 50 seems like it should be enough. Drifloon is taken down easily once again. Then comes Gengar, who falls in one surf. By this time I had also put up 3 workups. Miss Magius is up next, and of course, I knew I was slower than Miss Magius. Crazy enough, it actually did not use Magical Leave, and I was able to take it down and proceed on with our journey. It was at this point that I made a decision to go with this specific moveset. Double Team, Work Up, Surf, and Bite. It's really not a bad set since I've used the first 2 so often before. I also did not show going to Pastoria and surfing to get the Mystic Water held item. This will be on for some of the fights. Other fights will be a berry for survivability. My one concern going into Byron is speed. Squirt's speed stat is just not the highest it could be. It doesn't seem to be that big of an issue right now, but during the final few fights, it will become a huge issue. Byron actually poses a threat this time, just due to Sandstorm that will be flying around a lot. Squirts sets up double teams and a couple of workups, and as Bronzor goes down, we are in Torrent range. That just means Squirts is getting a bonus damage from his ability. The boost is gigantic, especially in the rain. And on top of that is Mystic Water. This adds an additional 10% damage to the damage that we are already dealing. This will be dealing massive, serious damage. But the problem is, it's at the cost of 1 hit knocking Squirts out. Being at 7 HP is not fun, especially when you never know if an attack will hit or not. Steelix manages to miss thankfully, and Bastiodon also misses. If either had used Sandstorm, we would have been out of luck and have to start all over. Thankfully, it's time to move on to the galactic part of the game. Commander Saturn at Lake Valor is up first. Kadabra actually pops off Rain Dance, and I take that as a blessing for surfing. At this moment though, it occurred to me that Toxicroak, Saturn's next Pokemon, has dry skin, meaning all water attacks will heal it instead of damaging it. Never realized this, and Bite does very little damage. Toxicroak just whittles Squirts down to nothing, and forces me to bring back Ice Beam onto Squirts for the second attempt. This time, it's basically the same, except Toxicroak goes down to Ice Beam in 1 attack. Mars comes to us from Lake Verity. Once again, the main issue Squirts has to deal with is, of course, poison. Unfortunately, Golbat does get the poison with Poison Fang. The question here is, can Squirts deal enough damage fast enough to get through the fight before the poison fully takes him out? Ugly is a 2-shot with Surf being somewhat powered up. Bronzor also goes down in 1 hit, and Squirts just barely squeezes by with 12 HP while still poisoned. The fight was a little scary toward the end, but it's over, and we move on to Candace. Candace was yet another wall in our path to becoming champions. she was not easily contended with. Hail is the biggest issue here, since it deals chip damage every turn, no matter what, as long as it's up and going. We use Snover to set up a couple of workups before using Ice Beam, since it's neutral damage due to its typing. Sneasel allows us to knock it out with Surf in one hit, and Medicham is where we realize the folly of our ways. One brick break from it, and we are in knockout range from Hail. The first attempt did not go the best, unfortunately. The second attempt goes a little better, as we do get to Abomasnow. I'm thinking Squirts has enough firepower behind him and fire off an Ice Beam. This barely does a quarter of its health, and with it knowing Giga Drain, the fight's pretty much over in a matter of seconds. It's time for another grind fest, and we're going up to level 60 in the Grand Underground this time. It's actually really neat that the Grand Underground is easy grinding experience. The third attempt, after getting 3 additional levels, goes quite a bit smoother. At this point, I realized the strategy that was used in previous challenges need to make a comeback. We go for as many double teams as we feel is needed. Workups are all the way up to 6 in order to take down the Abomasnow. Snover goes down to Ice Beam, Sneasel goes down to Surf, Medicham missed its attack and goes down to a Surf. With Squirts being in Torrent, I feel like Abomasnow would go down if hit to a Surf. I was correct, and it falls as well as one of the roughest gyms we have had thus far. With Candace being taken down and our 7th gym badge received, the Galactic Warehouse is next, and Cyrus wants a fight. Unfortunately, Cyrus was an extremely easy fight, which I will gladly take after the last few gym leaders we have faced. Murkrow goes down to 1 Ice Beam, Golbat was a 2-shot, and it barely did any damage back to Squirtle. Sneasel also attempted to deal some type of damage, but it was all for naught, as Surf does take it down in a couple of hits as well. Like I said, well needed after the rough patch we have had during these last few fights. Next up is Saturn in order to save the Lake Trio. I'm actually very surprised that Kadabra did not attempt a Rain Dance to help out Toxicroak, but at the same time, sad that it did hurt with Psychic. It does go down to a Surf, and Bronzor comes in and leaves immediately for Toxicroak. After a couple of workups, Squirts gets poisoned, and once again it's a countdown to if the poison overtakes before we knock out the remaining Pokemon. Toxicroak goes down with the last Ice Beam, and Bronzor also goes down with just 1 Surf. Squirts keeps winning this race, but for how long? You know what's coming up next. The one required double fight with the damn Galactic Grunts. Today, I chose to bring along Cyndaquil that I hatched randomly from an egg. The best strat here for me is to just spam Surf, since it hits everything, including Cyndaquil. Cyndaquil literally goes down super fast. And after a few Surfs, one of the Grunts goes completely down, and it's a 1v1 fight. A few Ice Beams takes them down, and we move on to the Mars and Jupiter double fight. This fight actually threw me for a loop. The Bronzors do their normal strategy of putting up both Reflect and Light Screen before confusing both of our members. I typically try to brute force my way through the first attempt, but I keep finding out that it's just not a good idea at all. Of course, I just love seeing all of Lewis's Pokemon go down one after another. It's kind of funny to me watching them fall like that. My fun unfortunately ends with the Golbats since they know Giga Drain. Attempt 2, I actually attempt to set up, but the Golbat uses Haze to nullify every single one of my stat boosts. This sucks, but it's not needed since the combining power of my rival and myself, we take them down. Cyrus's last fight with us was actually kind of funny to me. Honchkrow is slower than Squirtle. Never saw that coming actually. And goes down in 1 turn to an Ice Beam. Forget that ability and item critical up mess of its. I do a big dumb on Gyarados and try to use Double Team instead of Work Up. It backfires in my face as Earthquake deals major damage. Gyarados is just a tank and won't go down with less than 3 Ice Beams. It's sad that I was hoping for the Freeze to help out here, but it wouldn't have mattered too much, I believe, due to Weevil being extremely fast. The punishment for losing this fight is going back to the last Pokemon Center you used, climbing up the mountain once again, and fighting the Jupiter and Mars double fight again. Believe me, I took a 24-hour break after this fight was over on the next attempt. This time around, Gyarados was missing its attacks, which was allowing Squirts to go in for the knockout with Ice Beam. Weavile does attempt to dig, but misses when it comes back up, and gets a Surf to its face for attempting that. Crobat is down in 1 hit from Ice Beam as well. On Palkia, I just decided to throw a Master Ball at it. See, here's the thing. I'm going to give away that Palkia to one lucky viewer that comments the word Palkia before August 31st of this year. Volkner is a scary gym leader, since his typing is electric. Sadly, my worries came true very quickly. Raichu using Volt Switch is quite a lot of damage. Ambipom coming out using Fake Out as well really hurts the flow, as that damage is rough on Squirts. At this point, I realize it doesn't matter if I knock out Ambipom, Raichu will just use Volt Switch and it will knock me out. Sadly, once again I was correct. That was the end of an extremely fast attempt 1. We did try several more attempts with different strategies, just so we wouldn't have to go grind in the Grand Underground. But in the end, the second attempt actually ended with a flinch from a Thunder Fang. That hurt the worst since we were so close to winning. After grinding to level 73, nearly the level I beat the champion at on the other runs, we finally have a breakthrough. Raichu missed the Volt Switch and actually went down. Really? Once that Raichu goes down, his entire team kind of crumbles. After some of the hardest fights we have had the pleasure of being a part of, we are heading to the Pokemon League. Our first stepping stone in the way of our victory is Lewis for the final time. Let's be honest with ourselves here. From this point on, anything that can go wrong can go wrong. Staraptor has a Focus Sash, so it did a little bit of damage to us with close combat. Torterra goes down with 1 Ice Beam, with it being quad weak to ice. It just has no chance against that. Rapidash goes down with a single Surf as well. Unfortunately, Snorlax walls us since it has such a high special defense. We do barely a quarter, if that, to its health. It does eventually go down, but Floatzel right after that just finishes Squirts off with a crunch. On the second attempt, we go about the same until Rapidash comes out. This is where we set up some workups and a couple of double teams to maybe get up through this fight. We get super lucky with Squirts hanging on at 1 HP with Floatzel and getting the final dodge against Heracross. At this point, it's time for the final grind. During this final grind, we actually found a shiny Pelipper in the Grand Underground. Watch some beautiful magic happen as we catch this crazy looking shiny Pokemon. Let's take one final look at Squirtle before we take on the Elite Four and Champion. The stats are about where I expected them to be, but our speed is just not good. It'll be fine for a few of the matchups as we go along, but when it matters most, will he be there to save the world? Let's get started with the Elite Four, beginning with our boy Aaron. I feel smart going ahead and just setting up the workup in order to one-shot everything. One key factor here though is that everything is faster than Squirt's. With no double team setup, he will be taking damage the entire time. Dustox places light screens up and hinders our ability to knock it out in one hit. Heracross is a 2-shot, but we take a hefty amount of damage, and Beautifly takes us completely down with a well-placed Bug Buzz since it's faster. Attempt 2 is a lot different. At this point, we are going for evasion strats before damage boosting. Let's take a look to see how well this works out. It works well enough to take 0 damage the entire fight. It's actually pretty crazy just how well this worked. We move on to Bertha, the ground type user. With our typing and attacks, we will be good to go. Her first Pokemon is Quagsire, so we set up double team and workups. Here's the thing, we get knocked down to 8 HP with poison that gets expelled. We are now playing with fire. One attack will end it for us. But the fun part about this is the torrent boost we get. It's much needed as it helps take down the remaining Pokemon on her team, while Ice Beam works on the water absorb mons. She could have gone a lot worse, if not for being extremely lucky with all of the dodges. Flint, the fire type user, is up next. I don't feel like this will be a rough fight, but looking at what the Rapidash does to us, it starts to become apparent just how much damage we are getting dealt each turn. That poison jab hurts, and gets us down to about 8 HP once again. We take down Steelix and Lopunny super easily, and Drifblim comes in and burns us with Will-O-Wisp. Squirts can't expel it, and it's a knockout due to that. Attempt 2 is somewhat better. We get our accuracy dropped during this attempt, and that actually does kind of hurt us. We get burned by Drifblim again, but we have enough HP to survive this time. Unless we miss a lot. Infernape takes a couple of turns because of lowered accuracy, but we get the knockout and it's time for the final member, Lucian. This member actually took 3 different attempts to take down. At first, we thought it was going to be a sweep, but all of a sudden, things take a turn for the worse. On the final Pokemon Bronzong, the Earthquake actually gets through, and we are knocked out, and have to restart the whole fight. Attempt 2 was actually going worse, and we get knocked out by Alakazam, since it knows Charge Beam. For whatever reason, I never realized it had Charge Beam. Attempt 3 is our golden run, and everything finally falls into place. This song gets me every time. Just the sheer impact of emotions going through my mind as me and Squirts are one final fight away from being champions. I already know from my previous runs that this no item run is going to need a lot of luck involved with it. Let me give you the stats on how long this fight actually took me from start to finish. 3 hours of mindlessly beating my head against the wall to break it down is what it took. After a few runs, I swapped the held item to a La Papa Berry, just due to Lucario always being able to hit with Aura Sphere. The issues that kept getting me were Spiritomb knocking me out while attempting to set up double teams, Roserade getting Giga Drain off while at max evasion, or Lucario knocking out with Aura Sphere. I lost track at the exact amount of attempts, but finally, everything comes together for a show like no other. I present to you the true final battle against Cynthia. After the final attack is sent off and the damage is done, an impossible task has been completed. Squirtle only, with no items used in battle. The final time here does not reflect all of the resets done to take down the leaders, and also all of the mental breaks taken in order to get through this hell of a challenge. Will I ever do this one again? The only answer that I can give is time will tell. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.